Ellen Moe for all her years of service on the village board. Can we just give her a hand? Number 4, agenda changes. Are there any? Okay. 5, consent agenda. A, March 21st, 2024, regular board meeting minutes. B, licenses and permits. There would be a 6-month Class B license for the Hortonville Youth Sports. Julie Griesbach is the agent at Otto Miller Concession Stand. C, presentation and other accounts and claims against the village. If there are no questions, I would need a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Roll call. Grace?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Motion carried. 6, pre-registered citizens to be heard. You have a limit of 5 minutes. State your name and address. Comments to be limited to 5 minutes. And pursuant to the Wisconsin State Statute 19.832 and 19.842, the board's role is to listen to public comments and not to ask questions, discuss, or take action regarding pre-registered citizens' comments. Are there any?
Mary Ellen Algrim, 665 Commerce Drive.
Okay. Do you want me to wait till we're on the new business because I'm on that part of it? Or
Yes,
For
because
Milcor?
we don't take public comments during new business.
oh, okay, all right. Well, I guess then I should state my case now. My name is Mary Ellen Algrim, and my husband and I own Milcor, which is the address is 665 Commerce Drive in the second phase of the Hortonville Industrial Park. We are home to Algrim Explosives, and we have resided there. We got a permit to build in the industrial park back in 15 or 16, and we took possession of the building in January of 2018. We are a drilling and a blasting company, which means that we serve the aggregate producers industry for the state of Wisconsin. Aggregates go into your roadways, they come out of quarries and sand mines, and we work strictly in the quarries surrounding the state of Wisconsin, and we work strictly in roads and quarries. So we drill and we blast. So we are therefore just a service industry to the aggregate producers. Our equipment is very heavy, and our main concern with having the requirement of paving, which we just found out about, to our business on 665 Commerce Drive, is that we have 13 drills that we use to start the process. The drills are very big. They come in on our lowboy equipment, and they have major tracks on them. So to unload and to unload the drill would rip up any type of asphalt within probably 2 years' time. This would be a complete waste of money and our resources, and possibly being a demise to our company as a whole. We employ 30 on an average employees. 15 to 17 are from the Hortonville area, and 15 around in the Mineral Point area. So we take great pride in our business. We have taken great pride in the way we've conducted ourselves in the industrial park. We have meticulously maintained our yard and our business. We have bermed up almost the entire property to prevent and to keep privacy under control. So I am asking for a variance against the pavement that this has somehow come into play after 5 years, because will be destroyed. And the average cost is looking to be about $250,000 to now blacktop what will be destroyed in a matter of 2 years. and that's my case.
Thank you.
Robert
Oh, yeah.
Boyak,
Yes.
651 Industrial Park.
651 Industrial Park. I am the owner with my wife Mary of North Loop Real Estate Holdings, which is doing business Great Lakes Equine, the Equine Horse Veterinary Hospital at 651. We too are seeking a variance for the pavement. We took ownership of the property in December of 2018. I checked with my title company just today, and they asked for the documents there just to verify that I knew nothing about this, and it was not, there's nothing with my signature on for these covenants, so it was news to me. Now, 5 years later, we get the letter to have the driveway paved. My thing is, we service sick and lame and compromised horses. We had 147 horses at our facility on Saturday, the 16th of March. About 60 horse trailers or maybe more horses loading and unloading, which on pavement would be extremely dangerous, especially on wet, icy pavement. The gravel actually provides a great deal of traction for these horses that are often lame or, again, as I say, sick. We also have to keep a certain amount of distance due to contagious disease. We see a lot of horses with flu and rhino and some of these things that are contagious, so the trailers can't be parked close together when they're coming to our facility. We average somewhere between 12 and 30 horses a day that are being seen and unloaded and at our facility. We also have a specialty in performance show horses, so we do a lot of lameness evaluations, and those evaluations are done half the time outside on the parking lot where horses are lunged in a circle, which means they're trotted on a big line to look for soundness and lameness problems that cannot be done on pavement. They're tracked on a straight line as well. We also have a rehabilitation program for these show horses where they may stay with us for a certain amount of time, and they are walked around the building and exercised as they move, as well as taken out to graze in some of the paddocks that are there, going across the driveway, which if it were pavement would be a problem. So I submitted a letter for variance. That was denied. That's why we're here. All of those things are laid out in here, as well as the things that I've added to you today. It would be devastating for our business. It would be possible that we would have to turn some of those horses away, or even change a location if the driveway was paved. I can give you examples of numerous horse hospitals, and none of them have paved driveways, if that were to help, in Wisconsin and elsewhere. So we're asking, again, strongly for that variance. I'm happy to provide any information anyone needs. Thank you.
Then we have Gary Becks, 210 Industrial Drive.
Yes, Gary Becks, WGB Properties. I am also here for the same variance as the other people. I bought my property secondhand, vacant land in 2008, and at that time I was not given a covenants book, so I was unaware of this. And when we went through the building permitting with at that time, I can't say who was all working for the village at that time, but Bob Vista was the building inspector. And there was never anything brought up with him or when I went to the village board to get approval for my building that I built about hard surfacing the parking lot. I was given a covenants book in May of 2014 when Andrew Gitter was the president. He came down and talked to me because they had some concerns of the amount of equipment I had parked in the front of my building, asked me if I could get it moved to the back of the building just for nicer aesthetics for everybody. I have the least amount of square footage that needs to be blacktop, and the minimum it is going to cost me is $68,000. Now, the scope of my business has changed because of health reasons over the last 5 years, so I am renting out my building for a percentage of each year. And if I had to blacktop it, all my revenue profits from that rent, it would take me almost 3 years just to pay for the blacktop in that parking lot. That's gonna be a hardship for me. I also, my parking lot is asphalt millings, so there is no dust problems, which is apparently where the concern is coming in, that somebody has complained about dust. You know, if this is gonna be a problem and the town is gonna enforce, village is gonna enforce the rules, this is something that should have been done many years ago. The covenants were wrote in 1991. So 33 years later, now, we're coming back and it's a problem. There are also other businesses in the industrial park. I know that PSI in section 2, they have a variance for their gravel. My question is, what does the new L&S Electric have? Prior, when it was the sandblast shop, their 3/4, their property is gravel. I don't see them listed. There is also another person that was listed on this original 5 people that were sent registered letters that is not listed in the planning and zoning meetings, which I feel that we should have been invited to that meeting to state our claim in front of the planning and zoning. I don't 100% know how village business works, but I think that we should have been invited to talk to them. But the village is also in, you know, they haven't lived up to their end, because Stock Street, I can't tell you how many years it's been there, but it's been there longer than I've been there, has never been blacktopped. So therefore, the village isn't living up to their end of the deal. Why do we have to? So probably the biggest thing is, you know, is that the village, I'm gonna say, dropped the ball by not enforcing this many years ago. Had I known about this 12 years ago when I built my building, well, blacktop was a lot cheaper then. You know, it might have been something that I would have been able to, you know, do at that time. But you know, I've got a small property. I mean, $250,000, that's a lot of profit. You know, so I'm asking that the village board grant us variances and learn from this oversight that in the future, if they, you know, start another village industrial park, that we do a better job of policing it. The other question I have is that I'm not a lawyer, but I did consult an attorney, and from what we read in the covenants there, it really sounds like only people that have an interest in the coveted area, which would be the industrial park, would be the tenants of the industrial park. And other people cannot complain about what's happening in the industrial park. You know, they can't bring claims to the village and say, hey, I don't like it because the properties aren't hard surfaced. Like I said, I'm not an attorney, but that's kind of the way it sounds in there, is that only people that are affected directly are the ones that are able to complain. I shouldn't be able to go and complain because somebody's parking a camper in their subdivision where they're not supposed to have campers parked in their driveways when I don't, you know, live there. So I'm, you know, asking, you know, for a variance on this, and I hope you make the right choice.
Thank you.
Mike Oak, 320 Industrial Park.
Mike Oak, Thomas Metals, requesting a variance for property up there. Original building was built in '96. At that point in time, you can go back through your minute meetings, all the sheets involved. Everything was brought up in the covenants and taken care of at that point in time, except for the back parking lot, which we used to load and unload trucks. And the reason for that is, I believe, on the approved plans, it calls out for gravel, which is also in your records. So to come back almost 30 years later is kind of ridiculous. So we're requesting a variance and hopefully you guys approve it.
Thank you.
And then Claire Abbott's, 111 South Nash.
Hi, I'm Claire Eppets. I'm the business and property owner at 111 South Nash. I'm here to speak to the proposed further parking restriction in this area. I think that the village is potentially missing a mark when it comes to this area on South Nash. Seeking to further restrict parking, it not only does a disservice to our businesses, it also reduces access to the lake, the fishing pier, and it limits the options for overflow parking from downtown at peak times. If parking lines were painted on the road in this area, matching how it had been used historically, it would restore 8 to 10 available spaces. These would be very useful during the downtown reconstruction. During the panel discussion last week for the trustee candidates, I heard the word growth a lot. The village wants growth. That's great, and I support that. At our location on South Nash Street, we have established 3 retail businesses, and we've actually just added a 4th retail business. I thought that this kind of growth would be in line with the village's vision for the future, and I would love to work together for a practical solution in this area. I do not believe that further restriction is the answer.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay. Number 7, committee reports. A, library board. Pat?
We met last Tuesday. We approved funding for staff attendance at the Wisconsin Association of Public Libraries. The conference is going to be held in Stevens Point. So we approved that almost all the staff is going to attend the first day, and then they will handle the second day to keep the library open, kind of staggering staff. We felt it was very important for the continuing education. Ally gave her director report, an update, and the calendar for April.
Any questions for Pat? Okay, we'll move to 8, unfinished business from previous meetings, and there is none. 9, new business. A, discussion and possible action on industrial park variance for Great Lakes Equine.
So, the information's in your packet. Basically, all of these businesses were contacted after I was told that these businesses in the industrial park are supposed to have basically paved driveways. So I went over there, looked at it, and none of them were paved. I looked through our variances and the files that are on each of these properties because they were part of the industrial park that we sold. And none of these ones here had a listed variance with their properties. So, yeah.
Does anyone have questions?
I have a question. The Equine Gary Beck's mentioned they have the crushed asphalt. So when we talk about paved, is that meaning either concrete or tar? Because they noted in the letter that the crushed asphalt does not produce a lot of dust, and the water runoff is not there because it's not paved, it soaks in. So I'm wondering if things have to be paved, or if we could look at alternatives.
I'd have to look in detail because one of them does call for asphalt or concrete, and then hard surface paved. So in the second phase, which is Equine and Algram's, it states that, All parking areas and driveways shall be hard surface paved, dust-free, and properly marked. Where the original ones, all parking lots, walks, loading zones shall be permanently surfaced with either asphalt or concrete.
This went to planning and zoning, and I was part of that meeting. So this addendum A, that seems to be with each one of these properties that was signed, it references the covenant, right? That's where that comes in.
Right.
And I think the board that I've been on even approved a couple of these plans a few years back. And when planning and zoning looks at these, they look at the whole plan, and part of that is paving and what type of materials and that sort of thing. So you don't have any other variances or any requests, like, after the fact? You've obviously got plans.
There's, in some of them, so like Great Lakes Equine, they had two variances requested with their contract of purchase. But none of it was on the asphalt. It was to allow a permanent hospital and medical equipment to be at the subject property.
So, all right, so, I just want to address some of the stuff on this. So one of the ones I just heard was that, you know, the previous board, right, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 8 years ago, depends on whichever board it was, didn't enforce it. Unfortunately, we have, you know, I think the oldest member is probably Julie, that's been here. Otherwise, everybody else wasn't here for that. So we can't address what somebody else didn't do. We have no control. We can't go back in time. We weren't even here. So we can't look at that as something. All we can do is look forward and try to find a solution. I hear that this is a significant financial hardship, and I've heard there's a few legitimate reasons for not complying with having the pavement. You know, that being broken up and with the horses and so forth. I'm going to propose something, and that is one of the things I didn't hear from anyone was an alternative solution, right? So there's this end that says you have to pave it, and then there's what we currently have. So what I've heard from everybody is this is what we have, and that's what we want to keep. What I would propose is that that the owners of the properties, instead of just asking to leave it as is, possibly come up with a compromise solution somewhere that you could present to us that, you know, that gives us some way to say. So, like, for example, I just drove through all their properties before I came here. The equine, you have your employees, I am assuming, because there's the vehicles that are parked there, parked off on the side, right? And they're parked in what right now is muddy gravel and snowbank, right? And from the layman's perspective, myself, I look at that and say, well, obviously those where your employees and stuff are parking, obviously those can be paved, right? I mean, I can't see a reasonable argument to say where my employees' cars are being parked. You know, it's unreasonable for us to pave that. The same is true with the heavy equipment driving over it, where your employees are parking their cars, obviously within the intent of the agreement, that obviously falls into that. So I think that there's probably some common area that we can work out somewhere, but each of them I think is a little different. I mean, I think the concerns have been expressed. The agreements are pretty black and white, but, you know, with the excessive expenses, I would rather not have to sit here and say, yeah, you guys, from my vote, say, yes, you have to do this, you know, because the letter says you have to do it right away. I would rather see the business owners go back, look at their property and say, what can we do to try to meet with the intent of this agreement? And what could we present to them as a compromise, and then come up with a timeline, say a couple of years, to try to implement it, to try to mitigate, costs are ridiculous right now. Maybe the solution is, you change it over so that you don't have dust. Maybe it is that you pave the areas where people park. Maybe you just pave the driveway into where they park, and maybe it's you have an area to walk the horses where it's wide enough. And I don't know the answers, but I know that the two alternatives that we have right now, one is saying let's ignore the agreement that all the original property owners signed, or let's enforce this and put an onerous financial burden on everybody. I don't like either one of those. And that's where my position is right now. I would like to see some sort of a compromise somewhere. And I think everybody's situation is going to be somewhat unique. I don't know what anybody else says.
I have a question more for the attorney. So the individuals, Gardan, BG Do Right, and Carl's Custom Cabinets at one point were required to pave their properties. I don't recall the years that they were required to do that. Did they request a variance, or, do you know if they requested variances and they were denied? I guess my question is, are we setting a precedent, and whatever we decide to do, are we going against, because the covenant, as this gentleman mentioned, is like these businesses that, all agreed to follow these rules, or so to speak. And if we as a board, do we have that authority to change that covenant? Basically, that's what we'd be doing. We'd be giving a variance to that covenant. I just need to understand where we sit.
Yeah, so I'm looking through these now quickly, and Nathan shared them with me some time ago. It's been a while since I've discussed this issue with him. In order to receive a variance, there has to be a condition of the property, a unique condition of the property that causes an undue hardship. And a self-imposed covenant is not, that's not a condition of the property. And so I don't understand why the applications are for a variance. I think what they're asking for, what they should potentially be asking for, is for the board to take a look at these covenants and to decide whether it wants to allow for some sort of amendment. And it sounds like maybe that's what Jim's getting at here too. I don't think use of that word variance doesn't make sense to me in this situation.
No, I'm looking at their original plans, and the original plans says asphalt on some portions and then gravel on others. That was the original plan, which went through planning and zoning and went through a board at that time. So that was what was agreed upon. And we would essentially be going back to say the covenant, okay, maybe there's an alternative to that. Plus, we've also got residential neighborhood right next door to this too, and those folks, although I get it that they're not part of that covenant, but the covenant probably was created because it's next to a residential area. So I don't know what our options, other than looking at amending that, but what?
So, and enforcement is always going to be discretionary. Just because you didn't enforce it or former boards haven't enforced it in the past doesn't mean that it's unenforceable now. But, as time has progressed, maybe circumstances have changed. I don't know. That's a political decision to be made. From a legal standpoint, it appears to me that it would be enforceable now. I think getting some recording history would be helpful. It seems as though individuals should have been aware of these covenants when they purchased that property. But have circumstances changed such that the board would be willing to consider an amendment to these covenants and to put something into reportable form that says so? I think that's the question that needs to be asked and considered, not necessarily, is there an undue hardship? Is the makeup of the property causing an undue hardship that allows for a variance?
So then if there's an amendment to if there's a proposed amendment to a covenant, then is there a public hearing for that? So like so many neighbors within so many feet would be aware of this?
Statutorily, that's not a requirement that I'm aware of, and in looking through this, it looks like it would be up to the board and then maybe a percentage of the property owners to agree to that. And there are two different agreements here, so don't hold me to that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there would be a requirement for a public hearing. It wouldn't be a bad idea to invite neighboring property owners to take part in that meeting where that's being considered, if you get to that point. But, I mean, that's my initial reaction to what I'm hearing and to what I'm seeing in these agreements.
Yeah.
Where did the initial complaint come from? Was this inspired by dust or?
It was just a citizen who knew about the project because they still lived in the same home when the industrial park was put in, and that was one of the covenants that was in that process in order to put it in.
I mean, this is sort of like the storage units that we just allowed to go in, and we went through with all the neighboring residents, and the concern was light pollution and whether or not, you know, they're gonna have bright lights shining in their yards and stuff like that. If that changes hands 10 years down the road and somebody else decides to put bright lights in, and then nobody does anything for about 10 years, and another resident moves in and they come and complain because they realize, hey, you know, they're not supposed to have these bright lights shining in my yard. This is part of the agreement when this building went in, so then it comes back to us and then we have to deal with it. So regardless of how it came about, it is in front of us. My suggestion is that we table this for 120 days with the intent of hopefully getting back some proposals from the business owners of a compromise somewhere that we can work with, including possibly a timeline that could be workable. I mean, this is something that is extremely expensive, like, you know, closing up shop and moving somewhere else or closing down your business, and I understand that. So I don't think it's something that you can look at and say in a 10-minute time period, let's make a decision and you guys have to, you have to fork out some money to do this. You know, I think maybe it had, I don't know when the planning and zoning was, but maybe a few weeks, possibly. So that would be my suggestion, is that we table it for 120 days and ask that the property owners come up with their suggestions of how to, in good faith, you know, work out some changes to the covenant. That would.
I'm not objecting to what you're saying, Jim, but I want to get back to what Grace said. She said, what was the reason that it was brought up? I think whatever concern was expressed, we also have to honor that when we plan. Because if it was a concern, then that needs to be addressed during the time that we look at it.
Well, one of the main reasons was dust. That's the whole reason of having the paved,
Okay.
was dust control.
So if we do table it and have that,
PSI
we
was
have to
the
look at that.
only other one that actually had a variance. And their exchange was, they were required to put a slatted fence all the way around their storage area that is unpaved. So that was the compromise at that point.
So basically, that's why we would have them come back,
With that in mind, that plan.
and we would also ask residents or anyone that was concerned around that area to also attend that meeting.
I'd only be
So,
okay with this if there was a public hearing that included
Yes.
residents, because this really stemmed from the residents that are near there. You know, if I had a pool in my backyard and I've got, you know, dust, sludge in the bottom of my pool that I have to vacuum out, I understand the concern there. What's the appropriate chain of command here? What do we do with these variance requests? Because you said it really shouldn't be a variance, it doesn't fit. What is the proper chain of command so that we're doing this appropriately, and then we set a future agenda item, you know, and a date that that everyone needs to come back. I mean, I don't know. You know, if Jim's suggestion, you know, I think is workable, but I don't know if 120 days to me seems like a long time, especially, you know, for the initial complaint. Dust, which is summer's coming up.
It's probably not as long, because by the time they get me a note, mail's been horrible. You also have us sending out notices to residents nearby for a public hearing that you want to put at least about a month out so that you can make a public hearing notice too in the paper as well.
Yeah.
So 120 days it seems long, but it's not really.
So what
they're looking to get quotes and stuff for the portions that they're looking to resolve, they may need time for that.
Not to be insensitive, but I mean, it's been that way for years. So, if the neighboring residents have issues, you know, I feel for them and I understand, but, you know, this has been a long-standing, situation where this is what it's been. So, I mean, going another 3 months, you know, 3 to 4 months doesn't seem like a heavy burden to apply to them. I mean, it might be an inconvenience, it might be an unwanted inconvenience, but it seems only fair based on the financial burden that's being discussed here.
I support an amendment to this, and then maybe just openness to collaboration for wherever there's concern, then maybe address the specific concern, because we're affecting 4 huge businesses, and the concern may have not been rooted in, I want to see every business in the industrial park have asphalt. And some of these businesses, it's not appropriate to have asphalt. The equine place, it cannot exist there. I mean, thank you for sharing that information. These other businesses, there's also reason to not just be hasty and incurring hardship on their small business. It's a lot of work.
So does this go back to planning and zoning at all?
Yeah, so if the question is from a procedural standpoint, how does this work? My answer is, I don't know.
Okay.
Typically, you would have a written request for a variance that would go to your planning and zoning, they'd make a recommendation, it would come to you, and, you know, that process is in place. Here, I'm looking at the 1991 covenants, and it talks about how a variance could be granted by a resolution after recommendation, so
Yeah, and the reason why I ask is because some of our planning and zoning members were on the planning and zoning commission yet when these were created. That's
Yeah.
why, and they remember them.
Right.
You know, so that's why I just know that there was a unanimous vote to deny the variances based on the fact that they were part of creating these. I mean, can planning and zoning be involved in this just because?
My initial sort of reaction to this is, if they have that background and you want them to be involved, I see no reason why you wouldn't, as a board, entertain a recommendation from them, particularly if that affords an opportunity for the residents to come and meet and have a conversation that is focused around this issue. Maybe that leads to a better result than trying to do it all at a village board meeting. But you, as a village board, as I read this, have the ability to make amendments to those covenants. And I think if that's ultimately what you decide to do, that would be a better long-term solution than to continue to, you know, property by property, issue what you're calling variances, but from a legal standpoint, are not.
So what kind of action would we, if any, take tonight? Just make a motion to defer these variances? Or what are we doing tonight to make this the right process?
I don't know if there's there are magic words for you to use. I think, Jim suggested setting this at a board meeting 120 days out and to refer it back to planning and zoning. That would be appropriate. You wouldn't be denying the variances at this point. Were these written applications, some of them?
No, they were all verbal. The reason for, like I said, the reason for that is variances aren't normally granted like this. Variances usually go to the zoning board of appeals and aren't even approved by the village board. That's why I think her problem and my problem with the word variance is part of the issue.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right.
So,
I misspoke on that. Nathan's correct on that.
It's odd to have that in there instead of a special exemption, is
Right.
what it probably should have been worded as.
Does
Can it just
planning
be-
and zoning have anything to do with amendments to the covenants?
we'd have
It
to,
does not appear that that was intended here, but again, I don't, if you wanted them to continue to be involved and to make a recommendation to you, I don't think that that would be inappropriate. That's up to you. I don't think it's required with what I'm seeing
No,
here.
and my suggestion for that is just simply because the people that are on that commission were present when these were created and
Yeah.
understand a little bit more on them than I do, or, you know, and maybe could offer some insight too, and looking at, because I'm sure at one point they probably went through planning and zoning, I'm not even sure. I don't know.
I think we could ask the planning and zoning to attend the public hearing and also the people involved in these businesses,
Yeah.
so that they would hear exactly what each business is saying and why they want their variances or amendments to the covenants. So I don't think we need a separate planning and zoning meeting. I
You
think
could do
we
a
just
joint
go to a
meeting.
public
No, I think it
hearing.
could be both.
it could be
And
a
the
joint.
thing is, a lot of these folks weren't at the planning and zoning, so we didn't hear from any
We
of them.
weren't invited.
We weren't invited,
We didn't even know about it.
yeah. I watched the village board meetings minutes to see if something came up, and nothing was happening until I got a letter in the mail that said the planning and zoning has denied our request. Goes back to my question, why were we not invited to that meeting to state our claim? Another, you know,
We
I
were
don't wanna
told to
be a
write,
dick, but another undersight by,
yeah, we were told to write letters to see about getting a variance granted, that's, and, you know. so there was
That's
a
why
decent-
I
decent
mentioned planning and
likelihood.
zoning, is because I think there was a piece of the puzzle just missing.
yeah, they might have came up
Just
with a
to
different
invite them.
recommendation.
So basically, we have a planning and zoning meeting and then we have a public hearing?
You can do a joint planning and zoning and village board.
That's what I
meeting.
said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Right,
not two separate. It'd be one meeting.
right.
Yeah.
Invite the planning and zoning and have a public hearing.
That-
Yes,
I would set it up as a public hearing as well, so that way we can have a discourse.
yes.
Otherwise, everybody else is out there sitting on their hands, and unfortunately, you can't be part of the conversation at this point. So a public hearing, just for everybody's information, it allows you to have some respectful back and forth and,
Yeah.
and present and counter and instead of us just up here trying to hash it out ourselves.
So I think basically you do it, what Jim said, you go out 120 days to give these people time to come up with a suggestion, if they have one, to present to the planning and zoning and at the public hearing.
And open up a discussion,
Right,
because they may come up with a plan, but if there's a reason it won't work, or vice versa. So we
Yes.
can alter it as we're sitting here.
Hopefully, we can
so
come up
do
with something that works.
you need a motion on this? And we would have to go through each and every one at this time to make a motion to go ahead and do this, or
You could make a motion incorporating, I lost
All
the
of them.
agenda, but
So,
items
A,
9
B, C, and D?
through D.
To just
yeah.
table it for 120 days until,
Right.
until we have a public, okay, I can do that. I'll make a motion to table items A, B, C, and D, the discussions and possible actions in the industrial park for the period of 120 days, until such time that we can reconvene on this matter with the planning and zoning during a public hearing. Okay?
I'll second that.
Roll call, Grace?
Abstain.
Aye.
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 Motion carried. E, discussion and possible action on Crane Engineering effluent pump repair.
So this is a quote for Crane to rebuild one of our effluent pumps.
What does the effluent pump do?
The effluent pump pumps treated water out from our plant to the river. This is the cheaper option than buying a new one, having it rebuilt.
Thank you.
And again, only one.
It's pretty specialized.
How often do these things have to be rebuilt? What's the shelf life almost?
Couple years at least, I know. They get run hard because they're always pumping water out.
What's the cost of a new one?
I don't have that in front of me right now. Significantly more than this.
Okay, and what's the life expectancy of the new one?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I mean, I can find out if you want to bring it back.
That would, I think that would be helpful to decide whether or not you should be looking at investing in a new one based off of the life cycle of it versus a 2-year repair. I mean, at some point, obviously at some point, it makes more sense to replace it than it does to repair it.
Right.
You know, I mean, how often how many times can you rebuild this and repair it?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Okay, we would need then a motion to have them come back with some other information.
cost of a
or
new pump?
just a head nod.
And life.
Yeah, life expectancy, and possible new pump.
Is everyone in agreement with that, or do we need a motion?
If you get a price of a new pump, is there more than one supplier? Because I would come back with 3 if you have it, just so we don't have the same issue.
Okay.
Lack of 3 quotes.
Yeah, because they'll make you do it again.
I'll make a motion to table the Crane Engineering pump repair quote until the next meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carried. F, discussion and possible action on typical sections for Main Street reconstruction.
So, we had a public information meeting with the owners of properties alongside Main Street. At that meeting, just kind of went through the typical section that was being proposed, which was basically we have a central core with a larger sidewalk and parking, which would be in our downtown. The main question that's kind of been brought up was on the east and west segments. You currently would have it where there is no parking, is kind of what was initially proposed on either side of the street. After talking with a few residents, we did propose a secondary option, which would allow for parking on the north side of the street, which would basically be we'd be shrinking down the terrace size from about 8 feet to 6 feet in order to accommodate that parking on the north side of the street.
So originally during that meeting, it was from Nash to Greendale, or Nash to, what was it, Werner?
So there was an east segment, which was Greendale to Nash Street, and then there's the central core downtown, and then the west segment, which was from basically the bridge, Mill Street Bridge, not Mill Street, sorry, the bridge on Main Street by Miller Park. So kind of Crystal Springs area out to the Spruce and Gibbons.
Which I think an alternative to that, I like that you looked into an alternative, because I know eliminating parking entirely from Nash Street East and, what was it, all the way to Spruce?
Yep.
No, all the way to Spruce, from Briggs to Spruce with no parking on the street, I thought
Crystal Springs.
Crystal Springs, okay. I think with this trail coming through, and I think when we talk about growth, we talk about the downtown, I think it's important that we look at parking, even if it's a block or two, because we even talked about even at one point shutting down Main Street to do like farmers markets and that sort of thing, and then where do we park people, you know? I like the idea of at least looking at parking on one side of the street if we can do it.
So the proposed idea from myself would be to basically, you'd still have no parking coming in where you currently don't, and then having it start basically from the east segment by Dairy Queen there, over to Nash on the north side. And then you would allow for parking from basically Crystal Springs to Douglas. So
On the
then
north side.
on the north side, but it wouldn't have parking basically in front of the canning factory there. Or the
Toy
toy
factory.
factory, sorry.
And not in front of Gilbert's and that sort of area.
Correct,
Yeah, so.
where there currently isn't.
Being at that
Yeah,
meeting,
from
it was
Dairy Queen
very
to-
obvious
Green-
people
Greendale,
really
Right.
don't want to get rid of parking. You know, and I think we need to look at parking, but I think, so the two pictures that are in the packet are not depiction of that parking scenario, correct?
There is a scenario, it's the third picture, it's not colored, but basically you can see on the, typical section, it's 18 feet rather than 14, which was in the prior, Yep. Wait,
I mean, I just think too, if we're looking at shutting down Main
There we
Street
go.
for farmers markets,
Sorry.
where do you go?
Well, anything that we have, if we're gonna do events and close off Main Street and everything for events, where are people parking that come to our community? And that's what we wanna do. We
You
wanna
have
draw
parking all
people
over.
in.
I mean, if it's for the downtown, it's not necessarily gonna be, I mean, you have parking we have our village parking lot, we have the parking lot by, off of Pine, you have all the side streets there. It's really more for the parking for residents if they have basically family
Parking,
events or
whatever.
something. Because most people, yes, if it's a large enough event, they will park on that downtown strip, but most of the people going to the downtown are probably most likely gonna park in the downtown on Pine, on Alley 2, Alley 1. Hopefully people use the parking lot by Opera House. So there is a decent amount in that downtown area where you could park, and there's still gonna be parking available in that downtown area, even outside of it. So after Mill Street, it's still gonna have parking all the way to basically the bridge.
I'd like to see this go to committee to be a little more interactive, if we could have one of the engineers there, because what are we deciding on this design?
You're deciding on the basically the width sections, the sidewalk, the terrace, the road width, which would allow for the parking, and that's it. It's no, like, design, there's not the landscape architecture yet or anything like that.
This is,
The engineers are here if you do have questions, Ron Wolf and Corey Shu.
So
and they presented that night, I think Corey was the one that presented that night, and I mean, the minute you said there no parking, and I asked the question, I clarified, there was a vibe in the crowd, you felt it. So were there any other alternatives? I mean, this is sort of a county decision, but the village is involved, right? But this is a county roadway.
Yeah, but I think realistically.
We have input.
Yeah, I think they would listen to us and what we want.
And my concerns and thoughts are not as a resident. Yes, I live on Main Street. Yes, this would open up parking for if we had a family event. I think more about, you know, people trying to use the trail. People even wanting to go fishing. Where do they park to use our fishing pier that we put in at Veterans Park?
Yeah, just if there's room for a bigger, more in-depth discussion, I'd like that to happen, but if this design is concrete, like this is what it is, then I get that too.
I mean, realistically, the only other option, if you wanted more parking than what we're saying on the north side of the street, you'd pretty much have to remove the trail.
So you're talking about parking from Nash to basically Dairy Queen,
Right.
right? On the one side,
Right.
just parking on which side, the north or the south?
The north side,
The north side,
the opposite side of the trail.
okay. And you'd come all the way down to Nash, or, so you'd have parking right up to the intersection?
Yeah, most likely.
Okay,
The intersection is obviously going to be
it's gonna be different than what it is now.
Yeah, no
So
right turn
you
lane
will
and-
allow for more
Yeah.
parking a little closer, so it will,
Okay,
that four-way stop will actually give some more parking to the bowling alley and the businesses.
and
there.
it can adjust it for semis to turn and last parking stalls, stuff like that. And then the other section you're looking at is from,
Basically Crystal Springs, because other
yeah, I would,
Well, you have in the past. Yeah, I wanna see more parking. We need it for businesses too.
so, yeah, I would be in favor of.
What do the engineers think as far as our parking goes?
Well, if I might speak about it, so there was a scoping meeting done between our group at McMahon, the county, and the village back before Christmas. And ultimately, we just need direction. Okay, how wide, trail one side, trail both sides, no sidewalks, we just need to know, okay, what's our direction in terms of design? And it's still preliminary, and it's not too late to change. The direction at that point was to proceed with an alignment that had no parking aside from downtown, had a trail that was contiguous all the way from Gibbons all the way basically to the east end of the project. Sidewalk, maintain the sidewalk on the north side. So we proceeded then with that directive to see, okay, how does this fit? What does it look like? How generous are the terraces? What happens to the driveways? How do the profiles work? How does it fit? And it works, it'll work that way. It'll also work though if you want to return to an option with adding parking on one side. If you want parking on two sides, then we have to have a real serious discussion about what happens to the trail or whether the trail is even feasible. But you could put more parking on one side. From my perspective, the parking on the west side there are very few options for those folks without parking in front of their house. When you move to the east side, you've got side streets and you got the church parking lot. And a lot of those properties on the what I'll call the east side, between Dairy Queen and Nash, the properties that are on the lake side either have longer driveways if they're right on front on the road, or there's a lot of those properties that are tucked back behind. They have 200-300 feet to get back to their house, so they could have a graduation party and put people on their own property or on their driveway without needing the street. They don't have that luxury in a lot of the cases on the west side. But it does fit. The terraces are still, fairly generous. There's 6.5 feet, which is way more than what you have right now. This is still.
Yeah, we've got a terrace that's this wide at one point.
Can put snow on there.
This road is, it's on a diet compared to what exists out there today, but the traffic is a fraction of what it would have been, the detour, the bypass, I should say. So we just need direction, and actually, you'd mentioned, the Pullman crowd, we discussed numerous times, we expected a lot more of a reaction. We had a bunch of discussions about boy, I can't believe that there wasn't, folks out on the work.
Oh, there was a vibe. There was definitely a vibe.
there was.
Everybody just kind of was in disbelief.
It wasn't vocalized.
No.
We had 2 people who complained, and that's it, for the parking.
And I didn't come talk to you after the fact because I thought, well, I'll just bring it up elsewhere. But, I just know that anybody I've talked to that was at that meeting, they just couldn't believe. They're like, is that true about the parking? I'm like, well, I don't think anything's set in stone quite yet, but.
Part of the initial discussion as well, Ron talked about that scoping meeting, was we went through several times before that meeting and just did kind of a rudimentary parking study, and every time that I went through the village, there was nobody parked on the road. Now, that doesn't take into account some special events, like a birthday party or, watching a Packer game or something like that. But
Keep in mind that when 15 went straight through our downtown, parking on the road was not exactly, you didn't have that safe feeling getting out of your car. Plus, there's, with the right turn lane, there's a section of Main from Nash that is completely no parking. Like right now, there's no parking in front of my own residence. That's all yellow line. But years ago, that used to be parking, and there always was parking there. When people would go to fish, people would always park there and walk across the street. We have a fishing pier, but we just don't have any close by parking specific to it, and they park at the bank, which is private property.
So this cross-section is kind of a compromise for that.
The trail, maybe there were some residents that were concerned, did that all reach like a harmonious understanding.
There were some concerns that the trail was going to be close to their house. But we had mentioned that the trail will be no closer to their house than the sidewalk is right now. I think there's a misconception that people are gonna be driving, large vehicles down the trail, and that's certainly not the intent, I don't think. It's more of like a biking and walking trail that's a little bit easier to traverse than a typical sidewalk, right?
And I think too, what people had a hard time, I think, envisioning too, is that the road is gonna be much narrower.
Correct.
So I picture my neighbors across the street and I think, oh no, there's this big trail going in the front yard. Not technically. Where that trail is really where their sidewalk starts now.
Right.
Right.
They're not losing any part of their front yard.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do
So
those-
basically, you are looking then for a motion on this?
A motion to accept the typical sections of, if you wanna have it with the parking on the north side, in those sections, yeah.
Is the trail gonna be shoveled by the residents?
No, in the village.
We'll have to maintain it.
So what type of motion?
At some point, you'll have to formalize that too, because I expected a lot of questions about who takes care of snow removal.
I answered a lot of those.
Well,
There was a lot that came up to me.
right,
about
but
it, yeah.
you probably need to formalize and memorialize that so that, well, if there was, discussion here tonight, so that fast forward in 20 or 30 years, if the village, if there's nothing recorded and in 20 years the village says, we're kind of tired of all this snow, we're so, probably need to memorialize that, and if there's a commitment to do it, fine. If there's not, that's fine too. I don't have a dog in that fight, but just so the property owner, I thought that the property owners would want a lot more assurance that the village was gonna take over that maintenance, because it's very wide, especially if you didn't own a snowblower, that would be very on us to try and clear the snow off of the Hanover Trail if the village wasn't taking care of it, so.
And to address Grace's concern, this is, in my understanding, is just the layout of the road. This is not any kind of like major design downtown. This is not, this is just simply how is that road gonna get laid out?
This is so, to allow them to continue engineering. They will be doing a meeting with the downtown business owners to kind of go over more detailed landscape choices, is my understanding.
Because downtown, there is still parking on both sides of the road.
Right.
Nothing, this is just
Wider
these two
sidewalks, there's
sections.
amenities like lighting, stuff like that.
So what type of motion, just indicating a certain, and does anybody have a preference to one of these? I know my preference, but the typical section,
Yeah, I think we need to have the parking on the
north side parking.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say,
In the central, it's fine, but that, you need to have north side parking somewhere.
So I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the typical finished section County Double J north side parking drawing for Main Street.
I'll second that.
Roll call, Grace?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carried. G, discussion and possible action on 2025 through 2027 union contract. The contract you gave us, is this the final draft?
Yes, with the only correction, in the, normal hours, it talks about how there will be a trial period for 84 hours until October 1st of '24. It should say 25, considering it's not going into effect until '25 anyway. So but yes, that's the only other change. The rest was all the stuff that you agreed to, and then the stuff from the prior years of the agreement.
I have two questions.
Yes.
One is, let's see, what section? Article 8.1. If someone could explain what this paragraph on the first Wednesday of each month or alternate dates. I read through this like 6 or 7 times and I can't follow. It appears to be discussing the order of shifts being taken. and how that associates with the limited full-time scheduled officer versus the full-time officers, but I can't make heads of this, of how this is supposed to work.
That was taken directly from the addendum we created when we created the position.
Yeah.
None of that was edited.
Yeah, I know, but I can't understand it at this point. I'm reading through it and I'm going, okay, I'm lost.
Yeah.
So.
Basically what it means is on Wednesday, we have court, the first Wednesday
Yep.
of every month we have court. So we assign the limited full-time position, he's the court officer,
Mhm.
and when we don't have a court officer, usually Sergeant Barr attends,
Okay.
because he's dealing with a lot of the truancies and things that are happening at school. But the limited full-time position, officer would normally work that shift, and we normally have him come in at like 4:30, and he works until probably 10:30, or if he wants to cut hours because he's got more hours that week, but that's basically what this is saying in that paragraph.
Okay.
But that's how we're working it. So he comes in at 4:30 because we don't have an additional squad available until after 4 o'clock,
Okay.
because we have 2 school resource officers working Wednesday, myself, and then somebody working the road.
Okay. And then the ending portion of this, the future vacancies.
Yes,
So is
so-
that, like, if we lose if we
Right.
no longer have the limited full-time officer that accounts for,
So
who's gonna take
yeah.
that? Is that,
Basically, my understanding of that is, so say for instance, one of the officers, one of the full-time officers decides to leave, then we could offer that full-time position to this limited full-time
Okay.
position.
okay. All right. Thank you. And then I had, okay, so I was confused. The designation of shifts, is that changed at all, or has that stayed the same? I was trying to follow through, how the permanent, or the limited full-time, scheduler works here. And have those always been fixed? So like you get their they put in, the officers put in for a schedule, and that's the schedule they get for the whole year?
Right, so the full-time officers, they put in for November 1st, and then they need to be approved by November 15th.
Mhm.
So they get to do the shift picks, so basically it goes by seniority. So that, like, a Hauser gets first choice, Bar's not included in it. Hauser is really not included in it either because he's got set hours for the schools.
Okay.
So then it works its way down, Sweeney, Hayden, and then Sokowski.
Okay.
They get to pick which shifts that they want. Then what happens is the limited full-time position, we're not, the hours that they have on there, because Friday we don't work, Friday we're scheduled 12-hour shifts. So Fridays are 6A to 6P, 6P to 6A. Sunday is the short day on there, currently, but we're looking with that 84 to make that a 12-hour shift, so that the limited, because currently the limited full-time position is working every Sunday. So we're trying to get away from that so that he can work every other Sunday,
Okay.
because otherwise he's got Friday, Saturday off and has to come back on Sunday. So this will give him every other weekend off, kind of like what the full-timers have.
Okay.
So, and like I discussed with Nathan, I mean, this is the addendum that they had placed when we created the full-time limited position, but I personally would like to see that change to Friday, 6 AM to 6 PM. And then for week 1, and then for week 2, because week 2, it's got Friday from 2 to 10, but he's actually working a 6A to 6 PM also.
He's working
And
what?
It's a 6A, they're 12-hour shifts. Everything would be a 12-hour shift except for the Sunday could go back to an 8-hour shift after, if the officers determine they would like to go back to their 8-hour shift on Sunday after October 1st, 2025. Correct?
Is Sergeant Bart?
He is here.
Yeah.
He is, okay, he's
Yeah.
right there.
You know, and I would just add to that, that under management rights, and we have the ability to flex schedules, you know, to keep the agency operating. I think we talked about that
Yeah.
last time, but really that there was some, you know, it was a bit rigid with the the scheduling, but under management rights, depending on how the schedule shakes out, the chief always has the option to, you know, manage around that, especially with the limited full-time officer. I mean, I think there's even wording that specifies that, you know, in a couple weeks advance, you have the ability to do some shifting or changing of scheduling, so.
For the most part, I mean, he's on a rotation, and he knows what that rotation is, with the exception of somebody either going to training or somebody taking vacation.
Okay.
Then it's kind of flex.
Okay. Those are, I just needed clarification on that, because it's really wordy and really, and I know it's, I thought it had been there before, but trying to read through it again, I was just really lost trying to read it over and over and over again. And I don't work it, and so you know, it doesn't stick with me when it.
So, we've already made a motion on that, on the tentative. Do we need to make a motion on this one as well?
I need to express that there's, before you make a motion. On page 9, there's a typo. Under 9.8, it should say December 31st, correct?
Yeah, there's a
If this
5
is
in
gonna
there.
be our final draft, we need to correct
It
these.
probably does. The issue is when the person who creates this sends it over, I think the issue is sometimes
Going from one
Well,
Yeah.
just so
program
we
to
know.
another program.
right,
then-
because there's more than that throughout this. You know, there's I think where it says, it should say first, says it has other letters in the area. The updated copy will have.
And then under your, on your last page, under 27.1, it should be effective 2025 through 2027. It says 2022 through 2024. So that needs to be corrected before we sign it. On the very last page,
Yeah,
Duration.
Article 26.
yep.
So, are there more? Otherwise,
Well, and then on page 10, you have a part-time officer under 40 hours is not entitled to dental. Is that true?
I would have to look at it. I think
Because under 30, they're not
you said
entitled to
under
health.
40.
But it says under 40 for dental, is that correct? Or should it be 30?
I don't think it's either. I think it's 36.
36?
Is what our
Those are 32.
32.
I think
One of
it's
them was 36, one was 32.
I think it's 32.
And then on, it'd be Article 15.2 on the following page. When they do lodging, it says contact the accounts/payroll person. Should that be the clerk? Do you not verify all the
No,
reimbursements for the
No,
hotel?
that's-
or-
no.
No? That doesn't
Dan-
matter?
Dan does
Dan
it.
does
It's,
Okay. So other than that, that's all I have.
Jeannie, the one that you said about dental, I'm just making notes here, so in the motion, we can make notes to the different articles.
On page 10,
I don't see page numbers. That's the
under
problem.
11.2,
11.2, okay.
yes. And I didn't know if 40 hours was correct, or if it should be, like you said, 36.
Dental should be at 36,
I think it's 32.
32.
Or what's determined by Delta Dental, right?
Is that determined by the insurance company?
Yeah,
By-
that's why.
Yeah, that's why we have to look at what date, or how many hours
Yeah.
it is.
Would it be more appropriate then to put as determined, hours determined by eligibility with insurance?
Yeah, that would be easier.
I think
Yeah.
that way we
That way
don't have
there's
to change it
no,
every time.
there's no hour in there.
And that was Article 11.2.
Yeah,
11.2.
11.2A.
Yes. Just to,
Somebody
Make
write
sure.
all this down, because I sort of wrote.
otherwise,
Yeah.
you know,
I'll listen to that.
Well, I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the union contract from 2025 to 2027 with the notations of Article 8.1, changing it to October 1st, 2025. Article 9.8 to December 31st, a typo correction. Article 27.1, effective 2025 through 2027. And then Article 11.2, with reference to dental, is to change wording that references the eligibility with the insurance company for dental.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Aye.
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 Motion carried. H, discussion and possible action on ordinance O-04-24, amending parking prohibited section 40-4422.
So this was brought up at the public safety meeting by our fire chief initially. There was no motion to bring it to the board. This was brought to the board by myself due to the fact that the fire chief's request. And basically, some of the information is in my memo there. At this point in time, my suggestion to the board would be to table this until staff can work with the Outagamie County to see if there's a way to work out this area so that there would be the accommodation for parking and the roadway as well. So that we don't have issues with the fire engines going through here having to cross over the center line in order to get back to the fire station.
I'm fine tabling it, but I do have a question.
Yep.
You had mentioned that when the Main Street reconstruction happens, so there won't be a turn, so I'm just trying to picture this, there won't be a turn lane from Nash to Main, is that correct?
This is very preliminary. It's never been approved.
I know.
But there has been discussion from the county and ourselves about having it a single lane
Okay.
four-way stop, which would make basically it shrinks that intersection, makes it easier for pedestrians to cross. But one of the things would be reducing down the turn lanes with
So
that.
I guess my question along with this is when we do have somebody in engineering look at this, to maybe evaluate also the parking that the potential for parking that is between the bridge and Main on the east side.
The county was gonna look at that whole area for the future necessarily for what that bridge may look like in the future too, and
Okay.
look at some options. But they probably won't go farther up than the bridge area. They'll probably have McMahon look at that section when they're creating that cross section, which
I'm just trying to prevent them to having boomerang back to the
It's
same
gonna-
area. Like, if you're gonna look at it like
As a whole or long.
from Main all the way to, you know,
it's two different companies.
because we've got businesses, you know, that are in that area,
Right.
and plus we've also got a visibility issue coming up from the alley. We've got a lot of things happening there.
Right, but they're not gonna go past the bridge with their engineers when there's a contract with another engineering
Yeah.
firm to do the other area. So
Yeah.
it's,
But you're,
we're looking at this small section here, which is basically on this side of the bridge, and that's pretty much where we're leaving it for now. Like I said, I think that's something that McMahon's looking at when they're doing their cross sections, so in the next few months, when they get a little higher percentage of their engineering done, we may be able to get some of those conversations. And you also have another firm that's kind of working somewhat in that area on the alleyway area, so it's.
you have a lot of moving parts. I
Right,
understand.
so it's just basically, you know, I think we kind of gotta look at it all at once, but it's gonna be a different process. It's,
Just trying to address, like, Claire came, you
But
know, and
tonight
to work
we are-
with our business owners. So you've got a business that you worked with Wolf River Bank on this, and
Right.
there's dialogue, you know, or dialogue that went back and forth. I just wanna make sure we're doing that equally with everybody, so.
that's the plan, and that's
Okay.
why we haven't talked to the businesses yet, because there is no designs yet for that downtown,
Okay.
and that's why we specified in our contract with McMahon to separately meet with the downtown business owners prior to, designs for the board.
So tonight tabling it simply leaves parking there for now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did
Wait.
do some research from a fire truck standpoint. I had timed like how long it would take to get downtown from the fire station. And it's 2 minutes and 41 seconds, and that was heading east on Double T, then north on Nash, and then to that intersection at Main and Nash. And then I timed heading back to the fire station, but a different route, and it was, heading west on JJ or Main Street, and then south on Industrial Park, back to the station, and that was 3 minutes and 7 seconds. So there are alternative ways to get back to the station where they probably don't need to cross the center line.
Any car that goes over that area with a parked vehicle has to go over the center line.
Right.
We were just out there looking at it with the county. Every single car was over the center line by over a foot. It wasn't excessive, but it's still something I think needs to be looked at. Whether or not the fire department might have alternative routes to get back to the fire station, I think is a good point. But I think there's still a need to kind of look at this area for a pedestrian and car standpoint.
So basically, we need a motion to table and have the engineers look at it. Is that correct?
Yeah, and any change would most likely be with county, so.
Do I make a
Dean already
motion?
said that he was gonna have his engineers look at it. That's what we meant, that's what we meant with.
I'll make a motion to defer ordinance O-04-24, amending parking prohibited, section 40 to 47.
A second.
22.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I, discussion and possible action on R-11-24, resolution requesting the county to change the speed limit on County Highway M for the section between the bypass and County Highway M.
So this would be for basically requesting that they lower the speed limit. So I'm gonna bring up the county map. It might be easier for people to understand rather than the written stuff. So basically, right now, right here is Otto Miller Park. It's where it ends. It goes from 25 to 45 in this section right now. So what we're seeing is a lot of people increasing speed through here, making it more dangerous up here at the M&M intersection. So the request is to move 25 miles per hour right to basically here and have 45 start after double M.
And that opens up the issue we had too with the other stuff, right?
Yep.
We would just need a motion to accept this resolution.
I'll make a motion to accept R-11-2024, requesting the county to change the speed limit on MM for the section between the bypass, on M, sorry, between the section of the bypass and County MM.
I'll second.
Roll call, Grace?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carried. 10, report of village officials. A, clerk treasurer, Jane.
My report was in the packet. The election went very well. The DPW crew came at 5:30 and plowed till probably the close of the election. They clear off one spot and they have to go back and keep clearing it off. So that was great. The power did go off briefly for about 30 seconds, but we didn't lose any counts on anything, so we're very happy.
Thank you, Jane, for all your hard work and all your election
You're welcome.
inspectors also.
We have a great crew. Nathan grilled out burgers for us, and that was a treat.
Do you have battery backups for that stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The website's going live on Friday, April 5th, tomorrow. Lauren has worked with the vendor, Tom Webb, and she's done a great job. It's more user-friendly. The main picture is Black Otter Lake on there, and it's our colors, green and blue, and so you'll have to check that out. We get regular updates with Tom Webb, but Lauren's really taken it and just ran with it. So check it out. I hope it's more user-friendly because that's the goal. And that's all.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
I had emailed you earlier today about the 99 budget. How far back do we keep budgets?
I could find electronically 2002.
2002. And if there was like a large expenditure in a particular year, is there any way to dig that up? No?
I mean, we can look
Potentially
through
the audit?
expenditure, yeah, in the audits maybe, but even those, they're not really meant, I think the audits are only 7 years after you have to keep it.
Okay.
We do have them further back, but the only other thing you could look at is larger projects that happened and infer costs.
I was just curious, there's a reference to
yeah.
1999, and I wasn't sure if it was a Prince reference or if it was, there was a big expenditure in the village in 1999, so, okay, thank you.
How many voters did you have?
598.
598? Anyone have any questions for Jane? Okay, we will go to B, Director of Public Works. Aaron?
My report was in the packet, and again, just wanted to commend my staff. After they were done helping Jane, they stayed on all night long once the power went out, helping me clear roads and sidewalks, as well as keeping our lift stations going when the power went out.
Tell them thank you from all of us.
They were pretty tired afterwards.
I believe it.
I bet you they were.
You got a good bunch. Anyone have questions for Aaron? Okay, we'll go to C, Police Chief. Chris?
And my report is in the packet. I'll be putting out a post probably sometime tomorrow. They're starting the siren testing, so you're gonna start hearing the whistle blowing at noon on Saturdays. We got pretty lucky as far as we've had meetings every day since the snowstorm, so it appears that, you know, the area up by Fremont, or Freedom, Seymour, Kaukauna got hit pretty bad. Some of them are still out of power. They have like charging stations that are being established and everything else. And emergency management has been great, you know, keeping me posted and updated right from the get-go. How many inches of snow that we've had, and then how many people are without power and stuff like that. So we got lucky. It was up, you know, over in the New London area, northeast of New London, and then to the south of New London. But other than that, around here, it was pretty good. I don't have anything more.
I have a question. So, towards the end of your report, you talk about the traffic study. So when you're saying the denied, are you talking about the ATV, UTV? Is that what that's written reference to, or is that from, is there an update to the UTV, ATV?
No.
No?
No, so the only update that I have is that we were approved for the MM, so we're currently working on the signs. We were denied from the east side from Greendale into the village because of traffic.
And we don't have it, maybe Nathan knows, we don't have anything coming up to get rid of the ATV, UTV access in the village, right?
No.
I mean, we created an ordinance to, okay, I just wanna make sure there's nothing out there that's to get rid of it. Okay, thank you.
So with that, with the ATV, UTVs, I'll be working with Ellington there's some signage that's up over by Mystic to the village limits. So we'll get that whole situation, that whole area with signs removed. Because when you come off of Mystic, it has an arrow that just goes to the left. So we need to remove that because it can go left or right off of Mystic now. So we'll get that taken care of as soon as weather permits. So.
Any other questions for Chris? Okay, we will move to D, Library Director, Ally.
This is the Friends of the Library's third year handling the Summer Rec Scholarship Program, which provides children from lower income families the opportunity to partake in summer rec, whereas the financial burden would be too much for the families. So we're still looking for more donations for this year. The last 2 years, we've had 10 kids each year that we've been able to sponsor. And it has made a huge difference in even creating memories for these kids as they're growing up. They're gonna remember this. And then I also am just mentioning that our book and bake sale is May 17th and 18th. We're still accepting donations, always accepting donations. And a sign up will be posted soon. We're looking for volunteers to help and volunteers to bake.
Any questions for Ally? Okay, we'll go to E, attorney, Ashley. Okay, any questions for Ashley?
I have a question. I have a whole list of questions tonight. So are we allowed to contact you directly regarding like ethics violations or anything like that? Or is that, if it's regarding a board member or that sort of thing, or do we just contact you, or do I have to go through the administrator? What's the process?
So, that's really for you guys to determine who you want to have contacting me. Typically, I would say the prevalent practice is I would hear from an administrator, a clerk, a department head, or the village president.
Okay.
Typically not from other board trustees directly.
Okay, thank you.
And if it concerns issues with maybe other members of the board, we try not to get involved in those. There are other avenues for those types of complaints.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go to F, administrator, Nathan.
Attended Fox West Chamber meeting today. I did my weekly report as well. Just kind of, I know Aaron and I kind of been halted. We were starting to pick up on starting to get stuff ready for projects and planning those out, but the snow kind of slowed that process down. So,
Some of our spring projects.
yeah, we are still planning on our, did a little more planning for the Arbor Day celebration, but that's about it.
Any questions for Nathan?
I do. Do we have any upcoming changes to our water bills or anything that's proposed, adding any sort of extra taxes like a utility tax or a wheel tax onto our water bills?
Not that I know of, it's the board's decision to do those.
But even then, like our water bills, if we were to change anything on the water bills, that would be a process, right?
Well, if it's through the water utility for the PSC to increase rates, that's, yes, a process. If it was through something else, another type of utility, that would just be on that bill.
But we can't like just throw a wheel tax or anything onto a water bill, right? We can't just.
Not a wheel tax.
Not
Wheel tax
willy-nilly?
is through
Okay.
the state.
Thank you. I needed that clarification.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go to G, building permit report. It is in the packet. H, any other miscellaneous topics for future discussion?
Yes. Currently, we video board meetings, and initially we used to video board and committee meetings. And I've had several residents ask me where certain videos are for committees, and even the planning and zoning, I think, would have been really helpful for the folks that were here tonight. And I asked Nathan, I don't know if this was a resolution that we did, but I would just like to see if there's a way we can make it standard, that we simply record board and committee meetings, and I don't know if that has to go to a resolution or whatever it needs to be done, but that way the community knows the standard. It's not a decision made on the fly. So I don't know if that needs to be an agenda item or what we need to do.
Any other?
I had a few people in the community talk to me about new businesses for trying to get a hold of the county for SIS signage on 15, similar to the ones that you see where it says this exit has gas station, has whatever. I looked into it. 15 is not a road, but if we can at least give them somebody to talk to show. I mean, I looked it up. 15 is not a road that has it. It's not really our choice, but if we can. It's a state thing. And 76 ironically is, but 15 is not.
Right.
But I would like to at least figure out who we can have them talk to to, or at least we can get something from somebody, so that we've done our due diligence, there's,
I did have someone call, a business owner, from Charlie's, I think, asked about it. I gave them the contact, from the sign, basically, the people that do that signage.
yeah, I saw there was an application on the
Yeah.
website or whatever that you have to fill out, and there was, like Charlie's, it wouldn't even qualify, because their business hours don't fall within the 10 to 7 range, but,
Right.
I just wanna make sure that we're giving that information out to, or at least doing our due diligence to,
Yeah, I mean, I have that
I get it,
available, if any of them need that contact, they can,
so I'll just, can I direct them to you just for
Yeah.
the sake of, okay.
if that's easier.
I would rather
Right.
have a single point of contact
Right.
where
Yep.
same information goes to the same people.
Well, that makes sense.
Any other topics? Okay, we will move to 11, communication and miscellaneous business. A, Black Otter Lake District News. Jane?
Nothing new at this time.
Okay,
Can I just have a quick question? How is the sign up going for lake cleanup? Do you get any updates from?
I just had, it just came out, and I just had an update, and I can't honestly remember exactly what it's, but, I'll find out, I'll let you know.
I know it's still online.
Yeah.
To sign up.
It is online,
I think Sean posted something, and maybe if they could also post the,
I'll look and see if I can find it.
oh, yeah, no rush.
it was posted on Facebook.
Yeah, you have to go on to the Fox West, or Fox Wolf Water Alliance, FWWA, if anybody wants to help with that, and you have to sign up on that, so. I was just curious, I hope we got enough people.
Okay, we will go to B, Hortonville, Hortonia Fire District News.
No, there's none.
When is the next meeting for that?
I don't know off the top of my head, Jean, I don't know.
Is it next week?
I don't know off the top of my head, I can let you know.
Can you set up the text message notification? This is like the 4th time I've asked for the text
I
message.
sent you a message
There
before the
hasn't
last
been-
meeting.
I don't know if there's been a meeting, because I haven't gotten any
Yeah, there
notice
hasn't
yet.
been.
They only meet quarterly,
Right.
Yeah.
so it's,
And the text
And then I
messaging
was
from the
gonna put
village
it on the,
yeah.
doesn't have that, I've never gotten a fire district one, but you're gonna
We
be
never
adding it now?
posted it before, because we never, they just post physically.
Right.
I will
They
be
handle it
posting,
all right.
like when I.
Yeah.
So we fixed it. Okay.
We will, once I get the next meeting,
Right.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
the agenda.
So, is it Jim because he's the representative?
Tom
Is it
Banker is the chairman.
Tom Banker would,
So he would just come here with the agenda, hand it to our front office person, our front office person just posted it. We do
Okay.
that for the school district and
Yeah.
stuff like that, so it was never basically scanned in and then posted on our website as a village meeting, because it wasn't, it's not technically a village meeting, it's a district meeting, but now we're going to be doing that.
we get library board ones and we get, other ones, so that would just
Planning
make,
and zoning.
be just
I think
nice.
all of them.
thank you.
Okay, we'll go to C, Gold Cross Ambulance Run Report and News. There is none. D, Hortonville Civic Association. Jane?
Nothing new.
Okay. E, Senior Activities Committee.
We, on this coming Monday, we're having our coffee and conversation, but, 2 representatives from Fox Valley Memory Project are coming. So if you know of anybody that is dealing with, early signs of dementia, Alzheimer's, anything like that, or is interested in learning more, or also learning about how to keep our brains healthy, 9 o'clock Monday, and we meet in the community room here. Our committee meeting is Thursday, the 11th at noon. And a couple of us are going to a session, it's hosted by League of Women Voters on senior housing, affordable senior housing. That's going to be April 15th in Appleton, which is also the day of our potluck and birthday party, which is at noon. And we're making May baskets. April 23rd, we have a field trip to Hearthstone in Appleton.
Okay, any questions for Pat? Okay, 12, comments and suggestions from citizens present. Is there any? Okay,
Can I take just 1 minute?
sure.
Okay, I'm gonna speak kind of as the outgoing board member and citizen. I just want to thank fellow board members, staff, and all community members for your involvement in the community. I was listening to I think it was public radio the other day, and I read an article talking about all the communities that had nobody run for slots on boards, commissions, school boards, had absolutely no contestants or was uncontested. I think it says a lot about our community that we had 7 people running for 3 slots. I think that is really commendable, and it's 7 people with unique personalities, a lot of energy to bring to the board, and I guess it's my hope going forward that we continue to be open to new ideas, new residents. It would be very sad if we lost that number of candidates, if we went to none, because people are afraid to speak out. So I hope that we keep the people involved in committees with open minds, allow people to talk, listen, don't write people off when they have a new idea. I remember when we weren't gonna have a splash pad and we weren't gonna have pickleball courts, and look what we're doing, because we listened, to the community. And I think that's awesome. As board members, we get this magazine, The Municipality, and I thought it was real significant that this month was resiliency and sustainability. There's a lot of good stuff in here. It talks about planning for the future, and I think looking at the candidates and looking at people that want to be on the committees, there's this goal of the future. I mean, we're not all going to be alive forever, and I think we have to honor that, know that new people are moving into town with new ideas. Let's welcome them, let's welcome their involvement, and plan, it talks about 7th generation, plan for 7 generations ahead. Let's do that, and respecting people and accepting differences. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, then we will go to 13. We need a motion to go into closed session.
I have a quick question before we do that. Are we able to invite an elected board member to that session?
It's closed session. I would not think so.
Saving the time of having to catch somebody up is really what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think it's up to if you, as a board, agreed, you can always bring third parties, other employees into closed session with you, but it would require a vote of the board on that issue.
I just look at the developers agreement as something that we're gonna be working through beyond, and I'm okay
Then
with
what
it.
is their, as far as keeping this to themselves? Like, we cannot speak about closed session. So this person isn't a board member yet until 2 weeks from now. So how do we say you cannot talk about this?
Well, the same way that you would tell an employee that when
Okay.
they join your closed session. There would still be that same expectation that what is discussed in closed session remains in closed session. Their involvement and interest, regardless of the meeting. Inviting a third party into closed session, you do that for purposes of having them available because they're involved in some form or fashion.
Okay.
I'm not trying to stir anything. I'm just
No.
thinking about a developer's agreement and thinking, boy, that would be a lot to have to try and catch somebody up later on, It just would be, to me, a courtesy.
I'm
From a
okay with it as long
procedural
as-
standpoint, you can do it. But it's totally up to the board to decide if they feel comfortable with doing that at this point.
Do we need to take a vote on it then?
Yeah.
I'm okay with it as long as you get a quick brief as to the nature of how the information's handled.
Sure.
So,
Well, and if you wanted to limit it to a certain portion of the meeting, I think you could do that too. It's up to you as a board to decide how you want to handle it.
So we need a motion to do it?
Yes.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion?
I will make a motion to invite Bob Jewell, who is going to be taking office for the end of April, into the school session meeting.
I'll second.
Roll call. Grace?
Aye.
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 Motion carried. Then I would need a motion to go into closed session.
you wanna do this one, Pat?
Sure. I make a motion to go into closed session under state statute, it's repeated. 1985, parent 1, parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically developers agreement.
I will second that.
Roll call, Grace?
Aye.
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 Okay, 14, we would need 5 minutes recess to clear the meeting.
Is your last
17, any action on matters discussed in closed session? There is none. 18, I would need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now 8:34. We are now adjourned.